Call to order the Board of Supervisors meeting for Monday, December 18th at 7 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. How about establishing a quorum, Ms. Watt?
Supervisor Linda Wade,
Present here.
Chairman Dan Wolfle,
Present here.
Supervisor Mark Hain,
I'm just here.
Supervisor Jeannie Vogel,
Yes, I'm here.
Supervisor Derek Daniil.
Here.
All right.
Great start.
Welcome to all of you. All right. How about a meet and greet? We'll start with Santa on the front row.
Well, I really am Jim Mitchie, but don't tell anybody.
That's good.
Brandon Robinson, Executive Director of the Great Lake Regional Planning Commission.
I'm still Dale Vogel, Whitney River Drive.
It's encouraging.
Brett Gillett, Building Inspector.
Hugh Zettel, District 14, County Board Supervisor.
All right.
Craig Nellis, 4216 Highway 57.
All right. And over on the video capture.
Derek Reese, North Country View Road. And Larry Chapman, Glidden Drive.
All right. Thank you and welcome. I'm glad you're all here. This will be our last meeting this year, I hope. I could be wrong. Public participation. Anyone have anything they'd like to speak about that's not on our agenda already? All right. Why don't you take that with you, and I'm sure Brandon will need it anyhow.
I recommend renewal of the clerk treasurer's contract for reasons I don't need to get into.
Recommend renewal of the clerk treasurer's what?
Contract.
Oh, that's not even on our agenda tonight, but thank you for sharing that.
Oh.
We might make an
Yes, it
exception.
is.
I think it's.
I know.
Yes, it is.
Don't get nervous. I know what's on the agenda. The committee's missing, but the agenda item you're still on. All right, thanks, Jim. Anyone else? All right, moving
Thank you,
on.
Jim.
All right, I assume that our agenda has been properly noticed,
The agenda was properly noticed.
so a motion to approve it would be in order.
I'll move to approve the agenda for this evening, December 18th, 2023, as noticed.
Motion by Linda, second
Second.
by Jeannie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Approval of the minutes, for Board of Supervisors meeting from November 27th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Supervisors meetings from November 27th, 2023.
Second.
Motion by Mark, second by Derek, to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Okay, off to pending business. Give you a quick update on the vouchers. They have agreed and stipulated to the fine amount. The paperwork has been sent up by our attorney, and they will be making 6 payments, I believe. Correct, Amy?
That's correct.
6 payments, so that issue has been resolved. As you know, that's dragged on for a fairly long period of time.
And what's the amount of the payments, Mr.?
$15,000,
Over what period of time?
6 months,
6 months, okay.
yes. We went back and forth, and the gist of it was is we ended up at 15, which I think resolved the issue in both of our cases.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Could you move the mic in front of you, please? There you go. Thank you.
Mike should follow me. Should we get a new one? Okay, Shower Road update. And I think Gladys said that he has a map of Shower Road that he might want to bring up. But just as a refresher, a few months back, we got into a conversation with the county. Well, let me back up from that. I think you all remember that the conversation is we either do something to rebuild Shower Road, and as an alternative, we came up with an idea to see if we could straighten and move Shower Road. And in doing that, we required the support of the DNR to do an archaeological survey and also a environmental survey looking for plant species, et cetera, et cetera. What you see up there is on the bottom, which you only see part of the road, is the existing shower road going down, and then it slips off the map and comes back up towards the parking lot. And what you see in the gray area is the planned new route of Shower Road, which comes in just briefly after the intersection of Clark Lake Road and WD, and comes in across the DNR land and then into the bottom of the parking lot at Cave Point Park. Takes out some of the curves, or maybe a few curves in depending on what's up, but as a result of the survey that the DNR did, they did not find anything to prevent us from using this route. Now, they may move the route a few feet one way or the other, depending on trees, rocks, or something else. They have, I think, a 40-foot wide corridor to work within. We participated in that initial engineering study. We split the cost with the county, and now they've come back that we were basically waiting for the next step of the DNR, and now to the point that they want to go and have the final engineering analysis done by Stantec. And I'll just read, I think it's in your packet as well. Final engineering, an additional $4,500. So they're asking us to split that with them so that they can get that staked out, and then they'll get some hard estimates on the cost of construction. And Thad Ash will also give us the county's estimate on construction, so we'll have two to compare to. And then from there will be a process of trying to acquire some cash, mostly through grants if possible. And it's good probability that this could actually move out to a 25 project, depending on the timing of who's got the funds and/or grants. The way the county sees this is we would need to bring our section of the existing road from WD up to where the split or the fork is, up to county standards, much like town standards. And then we would participate in the cost of the new section of road going into the parking lot. The eventual outcome would be that we would then relinquish our ownership of the road, giving it to the county, and they would maintain it in the future. The portion of Shower Road that goes north of the parking lot, basically the area where all the people go, that strip that goes up to the Jacksonport town line would more than likely just be blocked with limestone boulders on both ends, so people could walk up there or whatever, but would stop all the traffic and any need for a turnaround or anything else. So just wanted to let you know that I gave them pretty much a verbal commitment, unless someone here has an objection, that we would participate in that cost share. And now's your opportunity to say yay or nay. Yay. Yay? Yay?
Yeah,
Yay?
so the
Go ahead.
total engineering then, adding in that was like 16,500.
Correct.
So we're splitting that 50/50.
Yep, we'd be in
With the
around
county.
$8,000.
Okay, when it comes to the actual reconstruction, is that going to be, is there going to be a cost share there? I know that it's probably a good candidate for either
Community investment.
TRIP, that or the TRID funds, either
Right.
discretionary or supplementary. Thad thought it was a good candidate for that, so.
No, it's definitely, let's put it this way, if it's our project, it's never gonna happen. I mean,
Right.
it would consume most of our budget for road construction. So, yes, I believe it'll be a shared cost with hopefully a lot of grant dollars. And that's one of the reasons too, in the most recent conversation, that this could slip into 2025. But they need this, they're saying it could, I think you were at the meeting, what did they say, maybe 60 to 90 days at the outside that they can get back to us?
Yes.
So early spring, we'll know what the cost is, and then at least we can see where they go, and the county will pursue a lot of that for us.
And you'd have to have an engineer's study anyway to make application for any of those funds, so
Yep. So, all right, I will,
money well spent.
you want to, Amy, just make a note of it and shoot Dad a note in the morning and tell him we're good to go?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great, thank you. All right, there's all the detail in there, by the way, if you're interested in Stantec's, what they're going to provide, et cetera, the map, so, for your perusal. All right. Next item on our agenda, we've invited Brandon Robinson who is with the Bay Lakes Regional Planning Commission, to come and address us. As a refresher, our dues payment is due in the next 30 to 60 days. Roughly right, just under $7,000. It's based on our valuation in the town. And we had a discussion with internally at budget time as to, you know, what value will we receive for that in the next few years. And so we wanted to give Brandon an opportunity to share that with us. So I will give you the floor, Brandon.
All right. Yes, thank you. My name is Brandon Robinson. I'm the Executive Director with Bay Lake Regional Planning Commission. Ultimately, for those of you who are not familiar with regional planning commissions, there are 9 regional planning commissions in the state of Wisconsin that were set up in the late 60s, early 70s to assist particular regions of the state with planning services, whether it be long-range planning, zoning, transportation, economic development, so on and so forth. So ultimately, if communities didn't have the capacity or didn't have a planning department, the Regional Planning Commission was there to really kind of establish to take care of those services for the organizations. We've been around since 1972, so 50 years of planning within an 8-county region. Those of you on the board do have that folder in front of you that kind of, there's a quick summary sheet in terms of the services that we offer. The front side is just kind of a quick synopsis. The back side is the different services that we offer to all 185 units of government that we serve in Northeast Wisconsin. Everything from community planning, we updated the town's comprehensive plan. Gosh, what was that, Linda? Was that
2019 was finalized.
We assisted the town in getting a coastal management grant for that particular project update. So not just long-range planning, but we also assist with grant writing, grant administration, help with mapping and visualization, transportation services. We assist the town every other year in conducting the pavement surveys and ratings for the town roads. Assist with economic development services, as I mentioned earlier, grant writing, grant administration, as well as some environmental planning. One of the biggest things that is a little different, each of our communities, each one of our 8 counties become members by paying an annual levy. And that levy is based off of the equalized value of the property within that county, based off that year's tax valuation. So ultimately, the county pays a membership. Every municipality within that county becomes a member automatically. In the case of Door County, the county is not a member. However, 12 of the 19 jurisdictions within the county are members of Bay Lake Regional Planning. Each of them pays their equalized value on an annual basis. As was mentioned earlier, the town of Sevastopol is slightly under $7,000. So what valuation or what do you get from that, from our services rendered? Basically, I kind of rattled off a number of things that we do. Obviously, that's not all encompassing. That's not every year that you're getting $6,000, $7,000 worth of services. The biggest thing is we will always reach out to the communities to determine what it is that they need for updates. Most of it is usually grant writing. Most of it is some instances within Door County. We are looking at updating zoning ordinances. We are looking at updating comprehensive plans. We're updating 3 comprehensive plans within the county right now at a local jurisdiction level, as well as updating 3 zoning ordinances within the county. Obviously, it's a little different in this case, given the fact that you are under county zoning and you have an updated comprehensive plan. So I would basically indicate to you that one of the stipulations that we have in our bylaws is, that was recently passed, is if a community joins, when Sevastopol joined back roughly over 5 years ago, there was a stipulation that our Board of Commissioners was not going to allow local jurisdictions within non-member counties to join. We were able to persuade them to allow us to reach out to communities, to have that opportunity to work with our staff from the Regional Planning Commission on long-range planning efforts. When the majority of the communities in Door County joined, the bylaws were then changed to indicate that if a community joined the Regional Planning Commission, if you at one point in the future were to drop out, you would not be able to join in the future as a local jurisdiction. The only way that we would be able to serve the community's needs would be is if Door County joined as an official member. At that point, every local jurisdiction would be a member of the Regional Planning Commission. You'd be able to utilize the services that we provide. That's kind of the long and short of it at this point. In terms of the value that we offer, I know, it's on a case-by-case basis. Every year is different. You have planning studies that are out there. You have a number of studies that are out there with regard to land use planning, land implementation, transportation planning efforts. We're always available to you as being a member of the Regional Planning Commission. We're always available to offer technical assistance through those dollars. Meaning, if you needed us to come to a meeting, being here tonight, obviously it's not technical assistance, but if you needed us to facilitate a meeting or go through long-range planning, update a component of your comprehensive plan, you do have a story map component of your comprehensive plan, that is that online component. We would update that at no cost to you. For instance, as census numbers have changed and population projections and housing projections will change. Hopefully in the near future here, we'll have some projections that will go out to 2050. We would be able to update those components of your document on the fly because it is an online component. We wouldn't charge the town anything for that. So it's those I guess on the fly updates that would be needed. Anything else that you'd be needed, we'd be able to come at no cost. Now, if we came up with a particular product, if we were doing, for instance, an outdoor recreation plan update for the community, we would offset the cost of doing that doing that outdoor rec plan with your levy dollars, kind of supplementing that cost as well. That's just an example. Same thing when we wrote the grant for the comprehensive plan through coastal management. That was at no cost to the town. I forget what the award was on that, maybe $12,000, $13,000, I think, in terms of the grant award. So those are just some of the items that are out there. As I said, every year's different. It's really it's up to the town in terms of what you would need for updates. Annually, one of the biggest things that we do is we send out a survey for projects that might be needed. I know Amy has filled that out a couple times. Annually, we send that out and we look to see what sorts of projects that we could help out with, whether it's pickleball courts and getting funding for pickleball courts, or looking to update a particular document that you have from a long-range planning perspective. So that's one avenue that we utilize to reach out to our jurisdictions to understand where we can help you. That's not always the case. I mean, some of those things are kind of far-fetched, but some of those things are immediate as well, so we can help out with those particular items as well. I guess that's really all that I have. I'm open to any questions. I do appreciate you inviting me to have this discussion this evening. I think I'd like to have more of these interactions with boards, not just at the local level, but at the county level as well. So.
Questions from the board? I have a few, but anyone?
I think you might be asking one I'm gonna ask.
Do you have any analytical data that tells you how many people actually look at our storybook online or anything like that? I'm just wondering
I
if
think
people are actually
we
looking
can pull that up. I think there was a point in time that was actually the most viewed component of our website. Not just by probably you as a group for a town, but I think your neighboring jurisdictions. We actually were getting hits from as far south as Missouri looking at the story map. It's something that was kind of cutting edge when you guys took that initiative to do that. You're one of the first communities to really kind of push that out there. And there's a lot more communities doing that now.
Okay, I have some questions I'd be happy to ask. I get more emails from miscellaneous government agencies regarding potential grants than I could possibly read in my lifetime. I can't even, after a cursory, frankly, tell you what half of them would I apply for or could I apply for. Are you a filter for that we could, I mean, are you engaged in getting all of these things so that you could say to me, hey, I think there's a grant here that might help us on Shower Park? Because as I read through these, I mean, literally, I can get 2, 3 a week. And you know, I can disqualify the ones that say for Native Americans, a couple. But I mean, after that, it becomes just mind-boggling. So is that something that you guys are engaged in today, that you can come full circle and say, hey, you should be looking at this?
That's one of our bigger components in terms of assistance to communities. Obviously now in today's day and age, funding is vital for virtually anything that you're doing. We actually have a funding portal. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look at our website. We do have a funding portal that is one of the more robust funding portals that's out there right now. Economic Development Administration out of Chicago's region basically said it's one of the more impressive portals that's out there. We update that portal on a bi-weekly basis. So if new grants come out, we pop those up. Any grants that are open, we will open those, or indicate that those are open, and then what are the timelines for those? When is the application due? We close those out when those application openings are out and outdated. We will filter that. I know we've had communications with, I've had communications with Supervisor Wade as well as Amy to go through some funding opportunities that are out there. That's kind of those hit or miss, but you're right, there are a ton of grant opportunities out there.
But you're basically, don't get me wrong, but you're basically reposting what I get.
We're reposting,
Or are
but
you?
we're reposting, but we're also trying to push out there what's available. There's probably 75% of those grant opportunities is not even, most of the communities are not even, they're not even eligible for.
Right, I mean, that's part of the problem. After you read 50 of them, you go, do
Yeah.
I spend another hour trying to discern this?
Correct.
So, okay.
So would we be further off not looking at the portal and contacting you guys with our specific needs and our, like the plans? Would that be easier for us?
It is, because we can navigate through the laundry list, if you will, or the grocery list of funds that's available, and whether or not you meet the criteria to hit those
Before we
funds.
even start on them?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, most of the requirements, as you peel it back a couple, I mean, it's just like, excuse me, I don't have a week to do this. So,
Yeah.
So I mean, that would be a benefit, like, particularly when you look at something like Shower Road, which we expect it to run.
It's probably a week, every week we will get hit up by at least 4 or 5 individuals to ask about grant funding, and then we have to weed through the applications, again, dependent upon what the project might be.
Okay, so we probably have underutilized you with that, in that regard.
Not after tonight.
You mentioned the county versus the towns. I'm curious, you said 12 of 19 in the county. So the remaining 7, how many of them are zoned and who are they? Would you know? Or can you provide us that?
How many are zoned?
What I'm wondering is are the people that are participating
County zoning?
under county zoning or not county zoning? The ones, I mean, are,
It's a mixture. It is a mixture.
I know Jacksonport is county zoned and they're a member.
I'm just.
Gardner is not county zoned and I believe they are a fairly new
Gardner,
member.
Union.
So it's kind of a mix.
Gardner's not county zoned, Union is not county zoned. We've had, discussions working with Union right now, as well as having discussions with Gardner to update their zoning. However, a lot of our work recently has been with yourselves, Jacksonport, Gibraltar, who are under county zoning. Same with Town of Washington. We're doing a comprehensive plan for them as well. Yeah.
I'm only thinking of the opportunity that might present itself through Wisconsin Towns Association, through a meeting where you could get at the remaining towns, possibly to get them to participate, to the extent that then the county would decide either we pay them through the we pay you through the county, you know, so you have this umbrella where you could potentially reduce the individual cost and at the same time maybe provide assistance for the remaining 7 towns or villages that are not members.
I did bring that up at a recent meeting. I don't think it was our last one, but the one before. And when the town of Gibraltar jumped on and the town of Jacksonport, I think there were like 3 or 4 towns that jumped on there. And I specifically asked them if they felt there was value, and they said yes. So,
Okay. Well,
of course,
it
they
might
were
be-
in the midst of doing their comprehensive plan updates as well. So it seems to me, Brandon, when we did do our comprehensive update, so we paid our dues to join, and I think they were maybe 4,500 at that point. But then I believe we also paid you for time, correct?
You
Yes.
paid
The
for-
dues
for-
don't
yeah.
include the entire comprehensive plan
dues-
update.
Yeah, so the comprehensive plan update was a tangible product, which time, expense, everything that goes with that. One of the big kickers there is the fact that we didn't charge, you know, let's just put your dues were essentially the application to do the coastal grant, which I forget the number off the top of my head, how much you were awarded for that project. But it was 50% of the project.
Right.
So
I want to say it was 7,500.
75, I think you might be right, isn't it a $15,000 plan?
I
think you're
believe
right,
that's
Amy.
exactly what it
Yeah.
was.
So there was value added there too, but by the same token, we also did offset the cost of the plan, because the Regional Planning Commission also, we get almost 65% of our funding is through state and federal dollars, which means we get a regional transportation work program, we get Wisconsin coastal management dollars. Being a coastal community, obviously on both sides, east and west, you also saw cost savings on that document, not just with the grant, but also the different programs that covered that. The natural resources component was partially covered by coastal management. The transportation component was partially covered by the regional effort that we have. And the economic development portion was somewhat subsidized by the EDA funds that we get through the Chicago office. So that helps with the technical assistance side of it as well.
Okay, so if a town opts out of the plan, we cannot opt back in. But if a county, so Door County opted out, but they can opt back in
Door County can jump in at any point.
at any time.
Yes.
They can go in and
What-
out?
Yep,
if they-
once the, yeah, for all intents and purposes, yes. Once the county, if the county were to join, you are automatically in. It's
And
automatic.
their fee or dues or whatever, again, would be based on equalized valuation of the entire county.
Of the entire
That would be quite a chunk of money.
Well, ours is gonna go up significantly once we get reappraised, given the
That's
fact
right.
that we're at around 65% right now.
I will say at this point, you know, our equalized value right now, the rate that it's at is 0.0006% of the equalized value. That hasn't changed in almost, I think it's been 8 years now since it's held steady. Obviously, the equalized value has gone up. One of the things, now, I've been with the organization for 25 years, but I've been the executive director for 6 months now. One of the things we're looking to do is really find a more creative, a better way to do the annual levy fees. Based off of, it could be based off population, it could be based off equalized value, different alternatives. The other regional planning commissions have different ways of how they come up with annual dues, and we are going to explore that into next year to see how that will change things.
Why wouldn't there be a similar fee across all regional planning?
Yeah, the bylaws are different across the 9 RPCs throughout the state.
Well, looking at the
It's not a
dollars, so,
one-size-fits-all.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Looking at the dollars, so the dollar amount would be $6,917 for this coming year. We do use you for our Whistler, our pavement rating. So I think if we did hire another engineering firm or whoever to do that, I believe that was around 2,500.
Correct.
And that's probably gone up in the last couple of years as well. So now we're looking at roughly $4,500 worth of what can you provide us? What is the benefit, $4,500 worth? We've accomplished so many projects. The bathrooms, we have that underway. We have the pickleballs. Courts are pretty much done. Shower Road would be a project, but we've got engineers working on that with us and the county. So do you foresee a project that we would?
Well, the biggest one would be to see if they can find us a grant to use for Shower Road. Because I mean, my preference would be not to spend any more of our normal road construction budget on that project. Because it will consume, I mean, we may have to, but I mean, it'll consume a significant chunk, when we have to step up to the plate.
And wouldn't that be a good candidate from the coastal management program? I mean, it's right by the water, so
Right.
Yeah,
do you foresee that as a potential?
It could be coastal management, it could be transportation funds, it could be anything, if there's any economic development value to it, which again, I don't know the project in general. But there are avenues of which we could find ways to get dollars.
So can a municipality take advantage of two different grants? Can you double up, can you get one from coastal management and one from?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you can do that?
Yeah, as long as you're not matching federal dollars to federal dollars, you're okay. But if you're willing and able to match the dollars, whatever that might be, 50%, 20%, yeah, you can. There's nothing wrong with that.
You would write that grant for us once we had like the engineering study and estimated costs? Would you write it for us,
Yeah.
or would you just offer guidance?
The way that you just mentioned it, like, we will not do the engineering side of things because we're not
We wouldn't have
engineers,
that.
obviously. But if we have the engineering materials to incorporate into the grant, we would write that grant if the material was there.
Oh, would that be on time and materials then, or time?
That would be probably
in
a
addition
time,
to the
again,
dues?
a lot of that is contingent on if the grant application is robust from the standpoint that it takes maybe 80 hours to do it, then there might be something there, but we typically will look at the application. Coastal application is one in general, which we've done so many of those, we can do those pretty quickly. It takes time, but because we're familiar with it. Once we become familiar with the application, it becomes pretty, we would probably be able to do it within, let's say that, under the time and expense of just the levy rate and the membership fees that you have, that you've paid. I could probably be 99% certain of that. Can't say any guarantees there, so.
Okay.
Would we expect to do that in 2024?
Depends on the engineering, and then it depends on the funding. But I mean, I don't know the grant cycles on these things, but from what we're experiencing with broadband, we could apply today and get it in 25, 26, 27, I mean.
And that is an option, that we apply for the grant, saying, well, we don't need the funds until 2025 or
Or we don't,
2026?
even if we need the funds, we can't get it prior to then.
Yeah, I mean, there are transportation grants that we write that the community won't see those for, at least 2 years. It's just the funding wouldn't be available. You could indicate that you wouldn't need to move ahead until 2026.
And I would assume that they would look favorably upon partnerships, the county, the DNR.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an opportunity. I mean, for my money, and it's ours, I'd say that I sign the check, we could give them the check. It's up to you. But I think we could roll another year and see what the impact is on some of the things that we're chasing and see what happens with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
that'd be okay with me.
I will just, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. One of the things that as being in the leadership role now at the RPC, I am going to make a conscious effort to go meet with the county to see what their feelings are with regard to membership, given the fact that 12 of the municipalities are members at the given time. We're gonna have a more in-depth discussion about how we can collaborate and maybe build that partnership to see if maybe it is a doable effort. So the municipalities are not having to foot the bill to be independent members, and you have more collaboration and a unified effort between the Regional Planning Commission and Door County overall. So that is one of my big things in the first quarter of next year.
Well, I think that'd be great, because not only that, as you and I were chatting just before the meeting, working off of our equalized value, I have an extremely bad experience with that when we were working under a fire contract with the city, and it took us years to break out of that mold. And fortunate that they felt the same way and were able to adapt to that, because with the growth along the lake shores, as you can well imagine, and we go through this, we could be significantly higher next year. So we'll look forward to any opportunities that you might have to reduce that as you move forward. So,
And by all means, don't hesitate to reach out to us. That's what we're there for. If you're looking for funding, I mean, it's just a phone call or an email, and we'll be happy to help out.
all right. Anything else from anyone?
The dues are always, like, if you did reach out to the county, are they always on an annual basis?
It is annual. I will say this, if the county were to join, just so that you're aware, if the county were to join in 2024 and you paid your membership fees, you would get reimbursed your dollars.
No. No, we'll have to chase them a little bit. We have 2 county board members who are extremely influential.
Oh, they're hiding.
They're hiding, yes.
Is that why you sat so far back tonight?
You and the hearing aids on for this whole
I knew it was coming.
Very, very concerning. Thank you. for
Thank you,
coming.
Brandon.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
I appreciate the
Thank you,
time.
Brandon.
Have a Merry Christmas.
And no obligation to stay till the last dog is hung here.
Yeah. Safe drive home.
All right. Next item on our agenda is the selection of a building inspector. This needs to happen this evening, because in, 9 days, 10 days, we won't have one. So if there's any candidates out there that are interested in being a building inspector for the town, please raise your hand. Any other candidates? Okay.
Seeing none, proceed to vote.
Okay, so in your packets, you have had information on Brett Gillett, who's with us this evening, an inspection specialist, and also from E-Services from Dave Enicle. And since my expertise is far from building inspections, contracting, carpentry, and electrical, I happen to have somebody on the town board that is familiar with that. So I've asked Mark Hain to take this building inspector selection, and I give him the floor to take us through where we should go.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've pretty much started my conversation for me, but we do have one gentleman here. We had 2 come forward. I've been in the trade since '96, full-time '97, '98, and I've worked with both of them. I have a little stronger relationship with one than the other. One I've worked with quite frequently, the other one I have not. I have a personal preference, but I'm not gonna say that quite yet. We have all their information, we have the contracts, we have the fee schedules. I believe we're looking for a 1-year contract, and then after the year, see how everything goes and go with long-term after that. I'm pretty sure that's the town is looking for. I don't know if we should ask questions first, if we should have, seeing that Brett's the only one here, have him speak first.
You're the
If there's
acting-
questions,
Very
if there's
control.
questions for me that I can answer before we go through, or should, I think we should have Brett give us a
Let
little,
Brett at least have.
give a little talk, if you have some points. of interest for us, please?
Well, thank you for having me. So I've been inspecting since 2000, as a contractor before doing electrical work, actually. I started with independent inspections, and I was actually your inspector back in early 2000s. Went on my own in 2010. I know that one of the questions that a lot of the towns have been asking me if I can handle it. Well, so far, right now I have 16 communities in Door County. I start in Egg Harbor the first of the year. I started in Sturgeon Bay, so I've been kind of transitioning with Brett, Timmy, through all these communities, trying to make sure that, we're working together here. So as far as, can I handle it? Right now, my wife has always been working with you. She does all the paperwork at home, the billing, all that. I just hired my son, and he's more of the business side of it. And he's been helping with paperwork and plan reviews and basically everything that's done in an office so I can get out in the field and do my job, and do inspections. I do have my older son also has his building license, and he helps me out when I need it, but he's a full-time deputy sheriff for the county, so he keeps busy doing that. I do have one guy that, he's retired from Appleton, and he has all his license, and he helps me, fills in when I need it. Like last year I went on vacation, and prior to that I had knee surgery, so I was off for 6 weeks, and he filled in for me when I was doing that. So he doesn't really want to work full-time yet, but he will fill in. And as of right now, I actually had a guy ride with me last week, and he's currently working on his license, so I have 2 guys that are interested. Building inspections coming to be just, it's hard to get people, just like contractors. So with these 2 guys coming on board, hopefully that'll help out, and we'll go from there. So like I said, I got 16 communities now here in Door County, and we got the manpower to handle it.
Linda, do you have some questions?
I have a few questions. The 2 part-time people that you currently have, Brett, are they your employees or are they independent contractors?
Well, they're independent contractors.
Okay, because as an independent contractor, would they be covered under your liability insurance?
Yes.
They are?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, Brett, Timmy's guys were all independent contractors, because I actually was asking him how he did it. So as long as each one has their LLC, they would be covered under mine or their own. But the liability would be under my insurance, not the town's.
Okay, and I noticed, like, on your fee schedule, for anything above and beyond the permitting process, it was $40 per hour, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that $40 per hour, say we asked you to address some complaints, or maybe we feel that something needs to be raised or demoed or whatever, that would fall under that $40 per hour? All right.
Yes.
And do you have all of the commercial certifications?
I have my commercial building, heating, and plumbing, and I forgot about that guy. I have a commercial electrical inspector that does all my inspections, Bob Jr.
Okay, so you have all the commercial qualifications where you wouldn't have to call anybody from the
No.
that
From the
cap or
state.
or
No.
the state to do any?
No.
Okay. And then as far as accessibility and like return phone call time, like you said, you have 16 communities now.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you can
Yeah.
handle that?
Yeah. well,
Haven't had
that-
any complaints about doesn't get back to me?
I never had any complaints.
Okay,
I've never heard of any complaints.
good.
Yeah. So, yes, I get back to them if someone leaves me a message. If someone calls me from Milwaukee or from Florida and doesn't leave a message,
There's
I think
nothing
it's
you
a
can do.
solicitor. I'm not
Right.
gonna call them back.
Right.
But that's one thing that my son right now is helping me out. I actually just leave him my phone so he can answer all the questions, and when he gets an inspection, he types it in my computer and I just go and do it.
And then your contract asks for payment by the 15th of the month. We always don't meet by the 15th of the month, so I
You know,
assume you're a little flexible on that?
Yes, I knew you, because, actually, when I did the contract, I had a lawyer read it, and most of the contractors that I've talked to that are like me, they all have the same thing. But I understand some of these towns have their meeting in the third week of the month, so it's not gonna happen.
Okay, and
But for me, it doesn't bother me, because I still get paid monthly,
Right.
whether it comes, whenever it comes.
I think we're good for the monies.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I don't think you'd be applying if we weren't.
yeah.
And then the contract also indicates a 2-year contract. Are you
Yeah.
flexible on
Yes.
that? Mark, you mentioned
Yes.
a 1 year, but,
I had some towns that asked me to do 2, and I probably just kept it on there, but yes, we can switch it to 1 year. I have
Okay.
some that ask for 1 year. And then just kind of like an ongoing contract.
and then I did notice a couple differences between your proposal and Mr. Ennigal's proposal. So your contract indicates that if there was a suit, a civil suit or whatever, that you would be strictly responsible for that, correct? That you would
If it was-
indemnify.
If
right,
it was me that caused the
right,
problem, yes, correct.
Right, you
You're
would
correct.
indemnify the town, so you would
Yes,
protect us,
yep,
compensate us, make us whole or whatever.
yes.
Yeah,
If it was-
Versus if it was the town's fault, then
Correct.
obviously we
It
would
was
be
something that I
responsible for
did
that. That was a,
negligent.
that was a difference in one of the contracts,
Yes.
so. And then the fees, of course, were different too between the two proposals that were, yeah, so. I think those were the
So that fee
only-
schedule is exactly, it's identical to all the other towns I have in
Mhm.
northern North.
You're not giving us a discount?
Not at this time, no. Yeah.
All right, thought maybe, you know. Okay. I have one question. Raise orders?
Yes,
Documentation? I'm assuming that you've done more than your fair share, or not?
no, I'd be honest with you, 3 or 4 that towns have asked for. So I know where you're coming from, so there was.
Where am I coming from?
Well, what happened in Gardner? So what happened there was, and this is a municipal lawyer, and he told me that as a contractor, you should have a contract saying you're doing raise orders. So I told him that my contract says I'll do things that the town asked for. But he said the thing you gotta worry about is if, let's say the owner sues you, that you want the town to be working with you, because I'm not gonna go to court and use my money to do all that. Does that
Well,
make
that's not
sense?
where I was coming from.
Okay, that's good.
So,
Okay, but I will do raise orders based on, but I always ask that the town's lawyer would help write the letter, because it's coming, because the raise
Right.
order is technically coming from the town, you're just
Right.
asking me to go look at that building.
Well, having had
Yeah.
a humongous experience with the Muscat property across from the mill,
Oh, yeah,
and Brett did an outstanding job.
I actually talked to him about that.
And our attorney
Yeah,
acknowledged that as well. And we have 1 or 2 lurking in the background, and
Okay.
I just want to make sure that I have no problem with what you're saying from a process standpoint. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that if
no,
we need to do that.
if it's a town request that, yes, I will.
Okay.
Preferably working with your town lawyer, so we make
Right.
sure we get
No,
all
I'm
legal
with that.
things correct, you know?
Yeah, okay. Now, I'm good with that.
We retain ownership of all your work product, correct? Like, I know when we dealt with independent inspections and with Brett Timmy, all of we retain ownership of all records and copies
the
of
files?
permits and documents
Yeah,
and
when I
notes and
issue
all
a
that.
building permit.
Right,
yes,
we get a
those-
copy of it.
Those
Yes.
files are town property.
Right,
Yeah,
yep.
not my property.
Because on many occasions, we do have to go back and look at those.
Yes.
So we would definitely want,
Well, you
Those
must have
here.
a filing,
we do,
System.
you have an,
That's
yeah,
right, yeah.
there's a separate
Yeah,
office.
so they would stay in here.
We have filing.
We got
Filing
We got
cabinets.
filing.
Let's just go filing.
Filing
You
cabinets.
can ask Brett if there's a system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Yes, those are all town properties.
The one thing that, being in the trades and dealing with the 2 inspectors right now, the other inspectors' fees are higher than Brett's. His fees are higher on certain things. He's got a couple other fees that Brett does not have. We've noticed that since he's taken over Liberty Grove. So just a few nuances there.
I don't see where that's correct, Mark, because I took, for instance, I took 2,750 square foot new single-family dwelling, all right? So Mr. Gillett would charge $1,150. That includes HVAC, plumbing, electrical, erosion. So $1,150. Using Mr. Enigal's 2,000, again, 750 square feet at 13 cents per square foot, comes to $357, plus the plumbing at $137.50, plus electrical, plus HVAC, plus erosion. I came up with $870.
Okay, well, I put them side by side, and I came up with a little more with the individual, like the electrical and the plumbing, and those fees were higher than Brett's.
Well, I don't, I mean, are we concerned with the amount of fees
No,
that
I
are
just-
as long as they're doing a good job?
Well, and then the other
And
thing.
we retain 10%, so,
If they do charge more, we get more in the end, but that's not what we're looking at
Well,
here.
I think the one area that maybe that's where you're tracking was, there's a break even where he's a little less versus the other, I'm not worried about it.
yeah, I guess the fees aren't that,
I just want to say real quick, Dave Enigal is sick tonight, that's why he's not here, so that's why he didn't show up.
I was wondering about that,
Yeah, I
because
thought
he did,
He was here before we had
Just
the meeting.
Side note.
All right.
Derek, you got any questions, comments?
I have heard a few comments from builders, electricians around the county of who they'd prefer, and I have heard they'd prefer you. You're easier to work with. I've also heard it from a family member that you are easier to work with at a house in Bailey's Harbor. I do know your family. I went to school with your boys, so I think you'd be a good fit for the town.
Jeannie?
Well, I would just say that, I forget which number it was. In Mr. Enigal's, contract, it was, if I can find it. I think it's something that, did Linda allude to it? The question that she asked, Brett,
On legal
on
representation.
the representation, and the way I read, Mr. Enigal's contract is that we would be on the
You'd
hook.
be on the hook, yeah.
So that, for me, that was, that drew the line right there. It was like, no way. We should not be responsible or account, for what the mistakes of
Something that I
the
did.
inspector. So, no. So that for me was the no, right there.
And we also,
As far as fees wise, they were close enough that that wasn't that much a concern. But that one paragraph
Oh, yeah.
about the
yeah, I circled that.
that was a no-go for me.
I did notice that Mr. Enigal's hourly, for additional services was at $100
Yeah, more.
per hour versus $40 per hour.
Yeah.
But I think I would like to see in the contract, that we do retain
You want it written?
the work product. And I think that's important.
You're talking.
If you could add
you're
that
talking the
paragraph.
permit. When I issue a building permit, all the files, right?
Right.
I don't think
I don't.
see, I'm representing the town, so all that paperwork is coming to the town of Sevastopol, so it's your property. So it's gonna stay here anyway. I don't think I have to put that in there.
You're saying it's ordered through the town, therefore it's
Yeah.
property of the
So when
town.
people come in, they're getting a building permit for Sevastopol, they're writing the check, they're writing everything to Sevastopol. It's just that you hired me to issue that permit for a building inspector. You hired Brent Timmy to do that.
Well, I'm just looking at the previous contract that we had, which was very comprehensive. It spelled it all out.
Yeah.
What we are responsible for providing, an office, filing cabinets, et cetera, et cetera. the work product, I just don't want to be
Well, if you,
Could there be something
caught
added?
If
something
we have to
that,
add, yeah, I can add a line, it's no big deal.
or an addendum or something like that.
well, he's gonna go back into the contract paperwork and change it from 2-year to 1 year.
Yes,
So if it's not a problem to satisfy,
yeah, just.
let's just
Yeah.
put a paragraph in there wherever it's appropriate and we can move ahead with it.
This is if we hire him.
I said
And
if.
I don't see any problem. I mean, our previous contract would be an open record anyway, that,
Oh,
He
you
could
know,
look
if
at
we
it.
could send
Yeah.
them,
it's all open
right?
records. Right.
And then you would have the language, Brett, for work product and what,
Oh, from
office.
Brett's, you mean, you're
Yeah.
talking, okay, sure, I could put something.
I guess I just feel more comfortable if it was in writing.
And we also have a few emails, couple emails, recommendation that we
Yes,
received.
we do.
I likewise called a couple municipalities, and either one of you are qualified to do the job.
Any other
Thank you.
comments or questions? Brett, you got anything?
No, I don't, nothing yet.
Well, seeing none, I would make a motion to hire Brett Gillett of Inspection Specialist LLC on a 1-year term with the changes we asked for the year starting January 1, 2024.
I'll second.
So, we have a motion from Mark and a second from Derek to approve Brett Gillett's company to act as our building inspector starting January 1, 2024. Any other comments, questions? Do we want to vote on this tonight then? I'm just kidding. Yes, okay.
I think maybe.
You have a motion on the floor?
We're not coming back before the 31st.
No,
I
I'm
know.
just kidding. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, thank you. and
Thank
you,
you,
Brett.
Brett.
See you sooner than later.
January 1st, I'm off that day, so.
It's a good thing you only gave us a 1-year contract. All right. Moving on. So, next item of business is the AT&T contract for broadband. This has been a work in progress for quite some period of time, as you are well aware, including going back to the days of bug tussle. We think that we have reached a point in time with AT&T, after review by our attorneys and numerous reviews by Jeannie and Hugh, and some by myself, that we're at a point in time where we will move ahead with the AT&T contract if we so decide to do so. I don't have it down on the agenda this evening for a vote, and I have it as such because I really think that we need to discuss and you need to digest a little bit about the financing options, because they are many, varied, and somewhat complicated and flexible, I guess. So I'd like to start with your questions on the contract itself, and let's resolve that we are good to go on the contract. If we are, I know AT&T is very anxious for us to sign it. I won't sign it until we resolve the financial questions, which I would do by our January meeting, or you'd have an opportunity to review it and discuss at the January meeting. And if we agree to do this, I'd send them something along the lines of a letter of intent saying we've approved the contract, and as a formality, it won't be signed until January until we resolve our financing. So, and Hugh, feel free to come up and grab the mic if you like. You've been closely involved in any discussion here. So, I assume you've all had a chance to read it. Let's just start with where your questions might be and anything we need to do, get changed or modified.
Linda probably doesn't have any questions.
Oh,
How long's the list?
Who gave you a highlighter?
recess while we answer questions. All right. Linda, you're-
Did you want me to start? No, really, there aren't that many. Okay, page 1 of the contract, the third whereas paragraph, where practicable. So, but it's going to be everywhere, right?
Well,
Why is that in there?
well, I think one of the things that is not a guarantee is that when you're dealing with like a condo association or whatever, or a private road or something like that, if they're not given permission, they can't deliver. That would be one thing. Hugh, do you have anything
No, that's
else?
the typical
Yeah.
challenge is getting easements with, in multiple dwelling units, so apartments, condos. Disagreements with folks that live on private roads. There's a number of private roads
Okay.
in the town of Sevastopol. And again, you'll see there's language there where they ask, that the town will work, with AT&T in those cases. But it's still, if those multiple dwelling units, condo associations, et cetera, don't provide or grant necessary access, there's nothing they can do.
All right. And then on page 2, so paragraph D, I did add up all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 payments.
Yep.
2,227,343, which is slightly different than when you did your PowerPoint in September. It's actually a little bit, it's like $100,000 more. I don't know if that,
Should be 50, maybe it might be $50,000 more or so. Some of the numbers,
I mean, no big
the
deal.
numbers are basically the 70-30 split of the full $7+ million. In our public hearing, I believe we also took into consideration the fact that the county is giving us $25 per
$54,000.
E911 address.
yeah.
That's, that 50,000 is, not in their purview, right? That's additional monies that will subtract off of that 2 million, for our financing.
Our share.
Right, so that'll reduce it even further.
Right.
Yeah, I think I saw something where they included that in here.
When are we eligible to get those funds? Do we know?
I think we're eligible now,
Okay, that's good to know.
yes.
And then, under paragraph E on page 2, paragraph E subsection Roman numeral number 2, if AT&T is not awarded the grant funding, the project will continue. So once we enter this contract, we are bound, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Whether we get funding or not.
Yes.
Yep,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
We're
No going
practical.
back.
We're practical.
Yeah, no going back.
No.
And then on page 3, paragraph number 4, logistical difficulties. It said, should they encounter logistical difficulties not contemplated, that we might be responsible for that? It says, we'll provide customer with an explanation of difficulties and resolution. Resolution as in we pay for it, or?
Make a copy for you.
Well, it also says, in addition for multi-unit dwelling units locations, standard practice to secure access agreement. Frankly, I don't know exactly how to answer that. Do you know, do you have a,
I'm gonna wait till you get I
What's-
don't have the latest copy.
oh,
All I have is red lines.
Amy's gonna go get one, sorry.
What do you need? The latest copy?
The latest copy of, the latest version.
It
of-
says,
Of the contract?
if AT&T should encounter logistical difficulties not contemplated, then AT&T may at sole discretion revise
Then something else.
to accomplish cost-effective workaround solutions. As long as it doesn't compromise service, I'm okay with it.
Thank you.
As long as it doesn't compromise their service.
Yeah, I think that's what they're saying. If there's a problem, they're gonna try to work around, do a workaround. You know, what problem may come up, I don't know that. Not, the word in there is not contemplated, so none of us are contemplating.
And then on page 5, paragraph M, assignment. AT&T may assign or transfer this agreement to any present or future affiliate. Do we need to be concerned about that?
I thought the exact same thing.
I
It
would
would
say
be an
that could happen
affiliate.
in any,
It would be
to any
an
company.
affiliate, not any company.
Or affiliate.
Well, I read the whole thing.
It can sell all of its assets without the consent of us.
Yeah, without the consent.
Well, let's put it this way. I don't know that we'll get them to budge off of it anyhow, and
It's not
Tyler,
gonna happen.
who took a look at this multiple times, did not have any issue with it as recently as Monday when he got back to me. So I'm assuming that any big company,
They put that in.
you know, is gonna have flexibilities, whether we like it or not. Sevastopol may not be able to say halt. So,
Just like in practical considerations, a lot of times too, the assignment may change from, you know, AT&T North America to AT&T Wisconsin, right? I mean, if I look at the legal entity that's actually involved in this, it's really an AT&T Wisconsin company
Yeah,
as
but-
opposed to AT&T corporate. And a lot of times they'll change those for tax reasons. But, you know, at the end of the day, the day-to-day operation is still what the customer normally, you know, sees
So
and feels
this
anyway.
doesn't preclude them from being acquired or merged with some other
Right,
Right.
fiber optic.
right.
And again, our attorney looked at this
Yeah.
language and it was acceptable to him.
this is the first
Supervisor
time-
Wade, if this were a small startup company, when you talk about assignments of contract, I know that was a concern with the previous company we talked about doing contract with. So if it's a smaller startup, private entity, that's usually assignment is a much bigger deal.
That's the only questions I have. This finance option, this was just
We're gonna-
handed out tonight, so I haven't had a
Dan
chance
just
to
did
look at
that.
it yet.
Yeah,
We're gonna
I
go
didn't
through
either.
that. I just want to resolve
Dan
any,
was working on that.
I want to resolve any questions on the contract piece. So, anyone else have anything in there that's, needs to be addressed, checked, clarified?
Just the very last line with the timeline.
Yeah,
thing.
we caught that. That'll be changed. What I noted to you,
Yeah,
that this, and here it still says the timeline is based on,
oh,
and we have to, we know we have to
Ten-one
fix that,
something.
yeah.
okay, so all we need to do, do you want to have her change it? I'm not going to sign this tonight anyhow.
Right,
Just have her change it and send it back to us?
yep.
Okay, all right. So, I'm gonna assume for conversation's sake, we're good with the contract itself then. I'll sign this at the January meeting. All right. What I wanna just touch on, and I putzed with this most of the week, hopefully it doesn't have some major mistakes in financing options. And so I'll kind of take you through these and ask for your input on what you like, you don't like, and where you think you want to go. When you look at the AT&T contract, most of what I put before you is based off of, oh no, we got the old version in front of me. It's the payment stream. No, I've got it here. It's invoicing payments, second page D, okay? And it says customer will pay AT&T the amount set forth. Will submit an invoice, and the customer will pay that invoice amount within 30 days. And then it goes to specifically lay out those amounts over the course of time. And it starts with the grant date. And the grant date in this, if you hadn't read it completely through there, they are applying for a grant on our behalf and have agreed not to do anything until the grant is resolved, so that we would then have to reapprove this contract to reflect the discounted amount of the grant, which they've agreed to, we're good with. So the first point in time here, it says upon grant date, AT&T will incur startup charges, and they're gonna ask us within 90 days of the grant date for roughly right $500,000, okay? So, just as a backdrop. So I put together some options. And as Linda indicated, the town share of this project is $2,227,343 without any grants and without the $55,000 roughly right from the county. All right? So our initial payment to AT&T is due 90 days after contract signing. It really should say grant date. It was contract signing at one time. So it would be grant date. I'll sign the contract itself at the January meeting. They will bill us 90 days after the grant date. So we are anticipating the grant decision sometime February, March.
Yes.
Probably March.
All right, February, March. So my date here moved a little bit. But let's just say I sign it in January. The contract signing date is 90 days after grant date, so we'd actually have to move this back a little bit. So we would be getting our first invoice in April, right? Roughly right, somewhere in there, April to May. At which time we'd owe $556,836. Now, after that initial payment, we owe nothing to AT&T until they have completed 25% of their customer locations.
Right.
And it's our understanding that as they complete these locations, those locations will be connected. They'll be hot, all right? The timeline in the RFP, if you caught that, had a lot of 1 to 6, 1 to 12, 1 to 24, et cetera. But if you look at the timeline and say roughly right, it's 1 to 6 months for project design, and then they're gonna order materials, and then they're gonna get construction. So based on that timeline, it's more than likely to me that no payment will be due until early to mid 2025, no second payment, right?
So, again, you're referencing Exhibit B in the contract.
Correct.
Yeah.
That payment would be $417,627. Now, if you've tuned into the Federal Reserve's most recent meeting, and/or as we did, we asked our local economist,
Our committee member,
whose total job was to be the head economist for, I think, Bank of Chicago?
Northern Trust.
Pardon me?
Northern Trust.
Northern Trust. And his job was basically to work with this and present information throughout the United States. And we said, give us your best guess. And this was actually the night before the Federal
Yeah, Paul
Reserve.
Castriel's, yeah.
Paul Castriel, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I should have mentioned.
That's okay.
Current federal funds rate's around 5.25% to 5.3%. And it's anticipated that it's going to drop somewhere between 3/4 to 1.25%. The Bureau of the Land Commissioner's rate today is 6.25%, and generally their rates run about 1% over the federal funds rate. So with all that as a backdrop, here's the first one I'll throw out there. The town makes the first payment out of our reserves and designated funds. Now, I've spent time with Amy, and we have enough funds in there that we can pull that payment out, all right, of our accounts, all right? At a point in time in the 3rd or 4th quarter of next year, the town would then apply for a loan to the state, the Bureau of Land Commissioners, to recapture and replenish those funds, all right? Now, if I'm right, in taking this action, there's no loan payment due until March of 2025. That's the way they work. So there would be no change to the 2024 tax bill due in '25, because we wouldn't have borrowed any money that we'd have to repay. Now, if anybody's got something that you think I'm off base, feel free to chime in.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
are you talking about using the
Bureau of
ARPA?
Land-
No, for the first payment,
For the
where we're
payment.
not.
We
So
would
we'll
use
use the ARPA money
ARPA
and our
money,
broadband
money,
fund,
and
which
then we
is,
take room tax or something
Yep.
else to make it up.
yeah, we have adequate
Correct.
funds to cover that.
Yep. So in doing this, we'd have no loan payment due until March of '25. There'd be no change. Excuse me. The loan payment amount due in 2025 would be dependent on the term of the loan that we would apply for and have to be paid for out of town funds. So if I go to the Bureau of Land Commissioners and I borrow $555,000, I can borrow for 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. What term I buy, it's going to determine what our payment might be. Obviously, the benefit to trying to delay this is that the rate ideally would drop from 6.25, 6 whatever, to perhaps around 5. And if you took the example I've given you down here, $557,000 at 6.25 for 10 years, could be 20. our yearly payment for that loan would be $75,000. If we wait and we're able to take advantage of a reduction, it would drop it to $61,000. Now, obviously, we could make that a 15-year or a 20-year loan, and just like a car payment, it would decrease the amount out of pocket. All right. Second scenario, which is we borrow all of the money now. And I think actually 1 or 2 towns are thinking of doing that, or perhaps have already done that. We could go and ask for a loan. We would not get that application in until January of 2024. And the way the commission works, you get a 60-day lock on the interest rate. Well, we know the interest rate's not going to go up, at least now, for another 30 to 60 days because they just had their last meeting. So in doing so, we would start the tax for the loan next year, all right? But we're paying for money we don't need, and we're losing 2 to 3% on what we would get once we stick it in the bank. So it's not the best decision, but if from a comfort perspective, if you like,
We're covered.
nice feeling, we borrow the money, we lose a couple percent while it sits in the bank. So in that scenario, borrowing money first of the year, the whole $2 million plus, at 6 1/4, a payment would be $195,000 a year. If we could get it down to 5%, the yearly payment would be $176,000, so save $20,000.
That's a worst-case scenario too, right?
Right, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
So, in scenario 3, I don't know if it's really a scenario, but the AT&T contract is revised and lowered if we obtain the PSC federal grant, all right? So we put in for, how much, I don't even remember.
They asked for
816,000.
816,000.
Pardon me?
816,000.
$816,000.
Yeah,
Now,
that
God
was
knows if,
AT&T's application.
God knows if we would get that, it gets split back between the 70-30 ratio back to us. And under the contract that we would sign, we've agreed to renegotiate that contract to reflect those savings. And of course, that would reflect in all of the numbers that I've just shared with you. If the grant is given, we have 2 financing options with the state. We could reduce the term of the loan, so take the chunk of money and make the loan 17 years instead of 20. Or we could reduce the loan amount, which would impact the yearly loan payments, but still leave us out on a 20-year term. Obviously, we don't know the answer to that until we know whether we get a grant or not. I'm just explaining the options that lay before you. And we'd get new amortization schedules from the land commissioner on those 2 options. And last part of that is there are options for the town within the DCPL loan program. We could choose to roll the dice by borrowing only as the need arises, with the expectation that the rates will continue to decline over the course of the next 2 years. There is not a limit on the applications, and at a given point in time, we could do a consolidation loan to pay off the higher interest loans. We would need to manage this closely, as the loan terms would or should try to have the same term length. Now, it's a little messy, but it's another option that lays out there, which says we are just going to wait and hope that everybody's right and the interest rates come down, and maybe we have one loan at 5%, maybe we get one at 4%. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. So before I sign this contract, I need you to digest this and then come back and say, this makes sense or it doesn't, or let the constituents come forward and say, I like it, I don't like it, whatever, and then we can decide to go one way or the other.
That was one question I had. At what point do we have to think about a referendum to ask?
No,
We have no obligation to do a referendum.
no.
And we have had this on our agenda for, God, I can't.
Well, not like obligated, but just see if the town
I wouldn't do a referendum.
Want to know if yes or no to spend this money
Right,
on this project.
right,
So
so
it's a lot of money
it is a lot of money.
going on the tax roll, and then,
It is a lot of money, but
It's a huge
we have,
benefit.
we
well,
have.
I mean, yes and no, it's a huge benefit. Not everybody is gonna benefit from it, obviously. Some people are gonna stay with what they have. Sure.
That's their decision.
Well, this is our decision that we're voting on. So my point is, we have constituents, we have people And we, look at what we have out in the crowd, we have 4 people here. So I'm just saying that my question is at what point do we ever think about a referendum? How many millions of dollars on the tax roll do we think about a referendum? Just a yes or no?
I would not go to a referendum. We have the ability at the town to take and do this loan on our own.
Oh, I understand
And-
that.
No, I'm giving you also for the benefit of whoever listens in. We've made a determination at this point in time that this is the right course of action for us to take for the benefit of the town. To consider going to a referendum would require us to delay this entire process till next year. And it would probably end up in the November cycle, simply because you can't get all that through in that particular point in time, which moves everything that we've done to this point in time is basically somewhat of a wasted effort, because it would have to continue on. We have to keep in mind that we have publicly talked about this
Over and over again.
over a year. We've had 2 meetings where we've had some pretty decent turnout with input from the citizens. Now, I grant you, not everybody had their voice, but I don't think that one of us heard one negative word from those meetings, during those meetings, or after those meetings. If anything, I've heard, how soon can I get this?
Yep.
It gives a lot of our citizens an alternative that's less expensive. And from the work that Hugh's done, the payoff in many of these situations, especially with anyone switching from Charter to AT&T, will save assuming the rates, $30 to $40 a month. And will obviously get increased service, better service, and people switching from the other choices that are out there. For example, Starlink, your bill, if you switch from Starlink, would probably go from what, 100 or 125 to $50 a month.
But that's not guaranteed either. We've
No.
never had AT&T guarantee any rates.
No.
That's
we don't.
that's the one thing that I've had a lot of people say to me is there hasn't been any rate guarantee from AT&T at all.
There's,
I thought part of the package is they listed what their rates were,
right.
but and they did not give a guaranteed rate, which is fine, but it's also considerably much lower than even especially what I am paying for Starlink as well. So, I mean, and as for, just in my opinion, I mean, we've been going through this thing for what, 2 years now, at least, maybe even more. Everybody knew that it's gonna eventually come down to the bill is gonna be on the taxes sooner or later. Anyways, we're gonna try and get as much money as possible. So in this case, I mean, taxes are gonna eventually go up. Just the way, how or when it's gonna go up is based on you and deciding which plan you're gonna do. Honestly, if you could prolong it for at least a year or 2, that's great, because you're right. As they're saying, they're predicting the interest rates to go down, save as much money to the townspeople as possible. That's just my opinion.
And the delay also be nice with the reval going through.
Well, that was the other thought. To your point though, the question on rates, we asked that of AT&T, we asked that of everyone that came back in, and they have national rates, and you'd have to look at it. AT&T is putting up 70% of this money. They're gonna wanna capture as many customers as possible. They're not gonna price themselves out of the market. They're gonna have all kinds of programs to entice the Charter customer and everyone else to migrate as soon as they can turn the switch on. And if there were cost structures, you can bet your bottom dollar that Charter and the rest of them are going to just mirror where they're at today. I mean, they're all gonna do the same basic approach. So, do you have a comment, Hugh?
Yeah, just building on that comment, Mark, a couple things. Number one is, as we looked at the areas that are hopefully going to be served, the challenge with delaying it to say, well, if we don't get the CPF grant, we'll go after the BEAD funding, which is the next federal funding opportunity. If we looked at working with the school district, 61% of the town of Sevastopol families in the school district are in the areas that have nothing, or next to nothing if you consider fixed wireless. So delaying basically hurts the people we want to help the most, right?
I'm one of them.
Right, and in good conscience, you know, if we don't get this grant, that's why it's, if we get it, great, if we don't, we have to move forward. Because the other thing we've learned is that in the Public Service Commission's implementation of the BEAD grant funding, their guidance is that they're gonna do that via auctions. And so basically they're taking the control out of the municipality. So they'll look at areas that need broadband, and the state's gonna define the areas, and then they're gonna solicit bids. So in those cases, we may, you know, a municipality may end up with a provider that they don't necessarily like, but they put in a great bid to the state, and the state's gonna say, sold, and you guys go implement it. So we lose a lot of control with the BEAD funding. Not to mention, it's not gonna, it'll start in the summertime, but you're probably not gonna get the money maybe until the end of the year. So again, we're holding the folks that need it the most hostage. So I applaud, you know, the chairman's, you know, recommendation of moving forward so that we can help the people that need it most. And I think through the public hearings, whatever provider anyone uses in the town of Sevastopol today, they are gonna save money, and their payback is gonna be, in most cases, less than a half a year relative to the tax levy. So I think we're trying to manage their dollars properly, and I think for those folks that have a hard time maybe looking at affordability, AT&T has the best low-cost affordability plans for those folks that are eligible for them, you know, probably better than any of the competitors. So we have flexibility in that way to help those families that need it the most. So I would encourage the town support. Thank you.
As far as the financing options, I like the scenario number one. At first glance, you know, we're just seeing this tonight, but, you know, making the payment out of our reserves, I think we can cover that without a problem. I don't know why we would want to borrow money when we don't need to borrow money and pay interest, so, you know, on a need basis.
It's a comfort thing, that's all.
The board of Land Commissioners, I think they're always gonna be out there, it's always gonna be available to us based on our credit history, so I don't see any problem with borrowing as we need, and I do believe that interest rates will go down, so.
Well, unless somebody has more questions on the financing, my take on it is we will go through this once again in January and decide where we're gonna go. And at the January meeting, we've done that, then I'll sign the contract and get it off to AT&T, and then all we need to do is hold our fingers and hope that the grant somehow or another works in our favor. If it does, we get a substantial discount. Unfortunately, we also had two or three strikes that we struck out, or 2 or 3 times, but maybe they'll feel guilty about denying us in the past. So, all right. Anything else on this? It will be back in January. Okay. Next item is the clerk treasurer, who is very concerned about my not having her contract renewal.
I thought Jim took care of that in public participation.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Just keep going.
I don't think there should be any surprises in here. This is
I don't know.
This is what we did with her at the budget hearing. Everything else is pretty much status quo. Amy, would you like to comment on anything relative to this prior to our?
The only thing that changed is the wage. That is all that changed.
Yep. Okay. Anyone have a question on this? If not, a motion to approve?
It would be my pleasure to move to approve our contract, our annual contract with our clerk treasurer. Thank you, Amy, for everything you do. You've really taken on extra projects this past year. You're amazing.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will wholeheartedly do a second to that motion.
I hardly got a chance to say we had a first. First by Linda, second by Jeannie. Any further discussion?
I think enough has been said.
All right, I would
Don't be
agree.
salty.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried, thank you.
No, thank you.
All right. Election officials, the Republican Party has given us a list of people they would like us to consider for election inspector nomination. As I understand it, it's just a motion to approve, Amy, is that correct?
That's correct. The Republicans gave a list, the Democrats gave a list, and there was only one on that list, and then I gave a list of unaffiliated people that we use. So all it needs to be done is a motion to approve the 2024-25 election cycle, election officials.
All right, sounds good. Did you just make that motion?
I'll make that
No,
motion.
I cannot do that.
I will make that motion, what you
Alright.
just said.
Motion by Mark. Second by,
Second by Linda, wait.
second by Linda Wade. It's a good thing this is the last meeting this year. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank
It's almost like
you.
we haven't done this 10 or 11 times so far.
We're all falling asleep now.
All right. So down, this, now I was wondering where that was, I just wanted, okay, financial reports. You have in front of you the account balances. You have the budget versus actual, January through November. And you have the transaction list by date. If you have any questions on those, now would be the perfect time to ask them. And if not, I'm sure the treasurer might have some comment. Do you, Amy?
I do. The tax bills, or what I like to call them, the town's Christmas cards, were sent out a week ago, and we have been receiving payments already. We will be receiving October's room tax payment this week, which amounted roughly to $20,000 more. And I did move $100,000 from the room tax revenue which is also known as cash applied, to pay for some of the road construction this year. So some of that cash applied is being used.
Okay, any comments from anyone? Hearing none, we need a motion to approve the financial reports, put them on file.
I'll make a motion to approve the financial reports.
All right, motion by Derek, second by
Second.
Mark, to approve the financial reports for November 2023. All those in favor
Merry Christmas, Jim.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried, thank you. Next, approval of the vouchers, bills, and claims, November 28th through December 18th.
I'll make a motion, the approval of vouchers, bills, and claims, November 28th, 2023 through December 18th, 2023.
Second?
Motion by Mark, second by Jeannie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried, good. County board report by this District 14 supervisor.
We didn't get one this one.
That would be Mr. Zettel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to keep it brief, just in light of the heavy agenda that you've had so far. From the last monthly meeting of the county board in November, the main topic obviously was the budget, and you've probably seen a lot of information in there already. I think the clear highlights are the tax rate of $2.61 per thousand of equalized value. That's versus the previous year of $3.10, which is a negative, 15.95% reduction. A lot of that has to do to the substantial increase, 22% and some change of equalized value for the county. The good news is that helps us on a tax rate reduction basis. Challenges it makes our affordable housing even more challenging. The other couple items to note is this budget also includes substantial investment in updating county employees' salary to remain competitive. So that's a huge increase here. About 37% of the county's budget is compensation and benefits. In addition to that, there is a substantial increase in sales tax applied to the tax levy of about $2.1 million. They budget a certain amount of sales tax, and the goal is to try to keep that conservative, right? You don't want to, bet the farm that you're going to have high sales tax, and then you have a huge shortfall. But the last couple of years, there's been, you know, substantially higher sales tax volume than what they planned. In subsequent budgets, they're going to try to close that gap so they don't have this overage. That tax increment isn't applied to the next year's budget. It's kind of 2 years forward. So the tax surplus that we actually had, sales tax surplus we had the year before, is being applied in this year's budget. So that's, you know, one of the things is we're fortunate that we have the sales tax benefits and increases that we've had. And I think there's some talk that might go down with some of the inflationary pressures that we have. It's interesting when you look at, to some extent, I don't want to say leading indicators, but indicators of traffic and other things we've seen from tourism zone, right? Some of the revenue has gone, lodging revenue has gone down, where, you know, folks are tight on money, you know, vacations, et cetera, are a discretionary value or a discretionary amount. We actually see some of those trends actually highlighted in things such as E911 calls and EMS volume. You know, a lot of that is reflective if you have less people in a county, there's less accidents, you know, less, you know, calls for help, those sorts of things. So we've seen some, I'll call it return to normalcy, you know, pre-pandemic relative to trends in those sorts of volumes. So that's one of the things we want to be careful about, you know, being too bullish about sales tax and getting that for extra revenue. There were no substantive comments or other feedback during the hearing on the budget, so it was approved. As part of our meetings towards the end of the year, at the November meetings, they also, by law, we review the results of the 2023 Door County Fair. The Fair Board meets in conjunction with the County Board, and we approve motions to get feedback on the fair. Overall, the fair was a positive success monetarily, as well as just with attendance, even though they had a couple starting issues with some of the unplanned rain, but with some of the bands and such that they had booked and the events, it turned out very positive. In addition, per Wisconsin state statutes, we reviewed the rules of order and the organization of the county board, how the subunits are created and managed, and the duties of each of the county board subunits, and those were also reviewed and reapproved at that meeting. Relative to things that are, I know, of a specific interest that I want to highlight relative to the town of Sevastopol, there were substantial discussions raised at the budget workshop in September, particularly by me, regarding adding additional resources to the land use department, in particular with the challenges of enforcement that we have. And that led to an action where the county administrator, they hired a consultant to look at efficiencies and other workload associated with land use, especially with respect to managing the ordinances. And that report is due by the end of this year, by which we will then review it in the resource planning committee meeting, and then therefore also with the admin committee to see how they will fund it. And there's been a commitment to fund a resource, whether it's an LTE or a full-time employee, based on the findings for this report. So we'll keep you apprised of that, Mr. Chairman, because I know that's of interest to you, and I share your concern about making sure that we provide the necessary resources for the land use team. In addition, I also want to make one comment just to kind of provide a shout out to our county broadband coordinator. As part of our grant, the grant process for the capital project funds that AT&T applied for, there was an objection made by the incumbent cable provider that said that they were going to provide service in areas that they already cover. And as part of that, the town responded to that objection. And in addition to that, the county also provided a separate letter with substantiating some other data. And I just want to publicly thank them for providing that extra level of support. The county has engendered a ton of credibility with the Wisconsin Public Service Commission and the broadband office, especially when you look at things such as the Weiser survey data. If you look at the Weiser survey data, they have been making recommendations of how they're going to implement broadband in the state of Wisconsin based on some of those actual hardcore findings, and Door County represents 40% of the state's data. So, so when you look at that, the county has developed a lot of street cred as part of our efforts, and a lot of that credit goes to Jessica Hatch, who authored the letter in support of our efforts in the town of Sevastopol. I just want to acknowledge her work and the work of the GIS team for all the broadband efforts that they've done behind the scenes. So big thank you to them. With that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Only one comment. The RPC thing, I had opportunity last week to talk to Ken Pavich myself. This has been an issue with me forever, that they haven't had good enforcement and follow-up, especially on conditional uses and stuff. I mean, our most recent example is right down the road before you get to the farm, where they're having storage unit sales every weekend. We had to turn that in to the county. They supposedly have written a letter, although we haven't seen it yet, saying you can't do that. There's all these restrictions, but in the meantime, the sale continues. And there are issues with tree plantings. I mean, it's just a myriad of things, and we, with Hugh's help and just raising this issue whenever I can, said we have to address this, because we're really shorting the townspeople when we approve a conditional use and there's no follow-up and follow-through.
Exactly.
We're stiffing the people that have to live there. So I appreciate the push by both of our supervisors to continue that effort, and on recognizing some help there too, Hugh. You've been a great assistance to the town on our broadband effort.
Yes,
And,
he has.
and to the referendum question, you'd have to live under a rock to not know that we were gonna try and do broadband.
Yeah.
I hope that there isn't anybody that's really surprised or taken back. We're gonna do what's best for the town at this point. So, thank you, Hugh.
Could I make one comment?
Oh, go ahead, I'm
Just,
sorry.
regarding our fair, the Door County Fair, I always make it a point to go to the fair. Paving that midway was the best thing they ever did, because it always seems we have at least one or two downpours during the fair. I feel so bad for them. But paving that midway, and, it's clean, you're not afraid to take your kids there, at least during the daytime. I don't normally go at night, so, my thanks to the Fair Board and the families that put the effort into the exhibits and the cleanliness and just the setup and the organization and everything, so thank you.
I'll provide that feedback. Thank you.
Good. Anything else? All right.
Thanks, Hugh.
You have
Thanks, you.
a copy of Door County Inspections monthly billing, the last, no, there'll be one more in your packet. And in your correspondence, you have some information on, this is the part that we talked about already, Destination Sturgeon Bay, what they're getting funded next year. Have you seen anything, Linda, back from her? Because she said they were gonna get another draft.
On what was
From
that?
Cameron?
No, I have not.
Destination Sturgeon.
I
And
also
I
asked
also-
for it, and I haven't gotten it yet.
And she.
Now, did
she
you
said
take
she
a
was
look
sending it.
at the draft guide, Amy?
Yes,
Because
the one that you had sent me.
Right,
correct?
so Sevastopol, we asked for specific pages, but I noticed that there's Nassauwapie is also included, and seems to me,
Oh, you mean separate pages for them as well?
well, maybe a half page or something like that.
The way
I don't
the
have
way that it was explained to me is, well, you get 2 pages.
I have not heard back.
I have not either. I can email.
Well, let's keep
tomorrow.
after it and see what happens. You also have a copy of the request from Cindy Forster to do some riprap on her street. Copy of communication from Northern Door, and Derek, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this, but is there anything here that we need to be concerned about relative to radios for EMRs, et cetera?
All from Greg.
Yeah, from Northern Door Communication?
I think it's just more him letting us know that he's still available.
That was kind of
Because
mine, but,
Yeah, that's the way it
Because if you
sounded.
make the phone call, it sounds like he's
That's
no
the way it sounded to
longer.
me.
well, if there's something that we need to do, Derek, would you circle back with me? Or Amy? Copy of the fire contract that has been now approved by both of us, is in your folder. Municipal forfeitures, this was interesting. We finally found out how much